be honored at home is more fulfilling than any other. And she also said, she qualified it that she is not demeaning the other accolades that she has received throughout her life, but being honored by your own people in your own home. It really, touched her heart.
Dr. Naledi Pandor yenu bengasho lu.
No, Dr. Naledi Pandor was not at the supper, but both of them will be here today.
Siyabonga kakhulu ngekhathi sakho. Loyo ke mbukeli weindaba ze-SABC usomlomo weshamthetho sesifundazwe iGauteng Morakane Mosuphi besichazela kabanzi ke ngomcimbi okhona namhlanje lapho kuzobe kuhlonishwa khona ke ingqalabutho zosombusazwe udokotela uNaledi Pandor kanye nodokotela Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Labo bobabili ke babamba iqhaza elimqoka baze baya ngisho ekudingisweni badela okuningi belwela inkululeko yakulelizwe. Igama lami nguCalvin wakwadludla endabeni SABC ngibika ngiseshamthetho sesifundazwe iGauteng.
The AU anthem.
Let us all unite and celebrate together the victories won for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. Oh, sons and
Thank you very much. You may be seated. Honorable members, I take this opportunity to welcome the members of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, our special guests, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and Dr. Naledi Pandor, invited guests, and the media to this special sitting which I have called in terms of Rule 18 subsection 2 and 4 subsection G, which reads as follows. The Speaker may designate a sitting to be a special sitting to hear an address by a visitor, and the Speaker may, in consultation with the leader of government business, invite, amongst others, the following to address the House. And it will be our guest. G reads as follows: any other person who has performed outstanding service to society. Rule 18 subsection 3, the only business that may be conducted at this special sitting will be the business for which it has been designated. Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, a stalwart of our struggle for freedom, has been a towering figure in South African politics and governance. Her journey from her early days as an activist in the anti-apartheid movement to her role in the negotiation processes that brought about our democracy is a powerful reflection of her steadfast dedication to justice and equality. So as a former Minister of Health, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Home Affairs, and Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Dr. Dlamini Zuma has been a relentless advocate for rights of women, the empowerment of youth, and the unity of our continent. Her contributions have extended beyond our borders, influencing the trajectory of African development and international relations. Today, honorable members, we honor her not only for her past achievements, but also for the inspiration she continues to provide to those who seek to serve our nation with integrity and determination. Dr. Naledi Pandor, another beacon of our democracy, has similarly dedicated her life to the service of our people. As a seasoned academic, a politician, and a diplomat, Dr. Pandor has brought intellectual rigor and compassionate leadership to every role she has undertaken. From her time as Minister of Education, where she championed access to quality education for all South Africans, to her last role as Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Pandor has consistently demonstrated her commitment to building a society based on the principles of justice, equality, and human dignity. Her work in the international arena has strengthened South Africa's voice on the global stage, advocating for multilateralism, peace, and development. Dr. Pandor's legacy is one of thoughtful leadership, grounded in a deep understanding of the challenges we face as a nation and as a global community. Ladies and gentlemen and honorable members, it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Naledi Pandor and Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Thank you very much, honorable members. The two doctors have dedicated their lives to a thriving democracy, and in this special sitting, we will be giving them the honor that they deserve. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, I received a list of guests, and I'm going to plead that I don't read all of them out by name. They will be acknowledged in the ATC as well, because we have this many. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to beg your indulgence that we include the name in the ATC, the names of our guests in the ATC. Suffice to say that Dr. Dlamini Zuma is also accompanied by her family members, the same with Dr. Naledi Pandor. Their family members are here, and I'm trying to get to the page so that I can acknowledge those. We also have in our presence, I'll go back to the members of the family as soon as I get to the correct page. We also have as our guests speakers from different municipalities in the province. We also have mayors from the different municipalities in the province. We have former colleagues of Dr. Naledi Pandor from the Department of DERCO. We also have guests who worked with Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma in the different portfolios that she held when she was minister. I also have before me protocol officers who are also accompanying and officials from their current positions that they hold now. No, I thought I had a list of family members. I don't have it here in front of me, but they will be acknowledged in the ATC. So let us proceed then with the sitting. I just want to remind members that the pink form is before you. This is a separate sitting from the first one. So if you could please sign the pink slip for the officers will come round and collect those. So we are going to then move to the first item in our agenda. Can the secretary please read the first order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The first order is the introductory remarks by the Premier of Gauteng.
Premier, you will come to the podium.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Let me take this opportunity to acknowledge also the Deputy Speaker, the Chief Whip of the governing party, Leader of Government Business, members of the Executive Council, leaders of various political parties that are here. I want to thank the following political parties for being in the House: the Inkatha Freedom Party, ACDP, BOZA, RISE, PA, Umkhonto weSizwe, the party, and the African National Congress. I want to acknowledge our leadership present here, our DSG, Nomvula Paula Mukonyan. Thank you so much, Mama, for always been here, always supporting us, and the entire leadership of the NEC, of our political party, and representative of various political parties that are here. Allow me also to acknowledge distinguished guests, the families of Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and the families of Dr. Naledi Pandor, various missions that are here that have decided to join us in this particular session. I want to also acknowledge the leadership of various Women's League, women's formations that have joined us here purely because we felt that it's very important that they join us this afternoon. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in the last 10 years that I've been in this particular House, never have we convened a special sitting to honor those that have made things possible for us. I'm humbled that today we've convened a special session to honor two extraordinary that have paved way for freedom today. When things were tough, they stood on the tough side. When things were difficult, they smoothened issues for us. When the path was hopeless, they created hope. When August, month of women. But we felt, even if it's difficult to find that day in the calendar of August, no matter whatever day and month, we will honor these stalwarts of our revolution. And we are proud that those that have worked with them, those that have walked this road with them, have joined us in this sitting, in this special sitting, in this particular house. We are indeed indebted to these two powerful women, and we want to thank everyone that is here for joining us, for celebrating with us, because today this is nothing else but to honor Imbokodo that made it possible for us to be here. To their families, we want to say thank you to you as well. I know you celebrate because they have more time with you now, but we are selfish. We'll forever keep them, for them to guide us, to counsel us, but most importantly, to teach us about the road they've traveled and to warn us about the road we are about to travel. We want to thank the legislature, led here by our speaker, and also the Office of the Government Business for organizing this particular session. Indeed, we knew those that on our left would leave this house purely because a government of national unity is not a government of themselves. It's only a government of themselves if they are in. If they are outside, it's not a government. So we are not surprised by their absence, but we are excited that in their absence, we can celebrate two powerful women. Once more, thank you, Mbokodo, for accepting our invite to be here. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Premier. And Premier, let me also thank you for acknowledging our leaders, our former Premier, Nomvula Mkonyana. Your name will also be in the ATC. Yes. Okay. And other leaders, please. Secretary, may you read the second order, please?
Thank you, Speaker. Addressed by Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma.
Please come forward now to the podium. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, Chair of Chairs, the Premier and MECs, members of the legislature, guests, comrades, led by Mayor Mkonyana. You can see I'm a bit nervous because I really accepted this honor with humility. It's the first time that I get honored in a legislature. And more importantly, Gauteng. Because Gauteng has a very special place, not only in South Africa, but also in the continent. So I'll come to that in the later session. Let me say I really like to dedicate what I'm going to say to all the people who have made me who I am. Starting with my grandparents, my parents, my teachers, those who helped, comrades, and members of society, my community, and everyone, colleagues. I'll tell you how I started getting interested in politics. I was at secondary school. First, I had teacher who was teaching us, that time it was called social studies. It was history. And he used to say to us, I'm going to teach you two histories. One of them is for you to pass the exams. The other one is to lead your life. And he will teach us Van Riebeeck and all that to pass our exams. And then he'll tell us about the ANC, the struggle, Mandela, everyone. And he said, but you dare not put this in your exam paper. If you do, two things will happen. You'll fail and you'll be arrested. But what I'm telling you must guide your life. The other one is just... And that's when I became interested. Then I went to high school. In high school, there were two types of teachers, because I went to Adams College. There were white teachers, there were African teachers. They had different perspectives. But what really said to me, I must join and fight, was we had two staff rooms, one for the white teachers, one for the Africans. But there was one person who made tea for both. He would start in the white staff room and make tea for them, and they go downstairs to make tea for the African teachers. Then one day, a teacher we loved very much, Utishu Mhluli, he was elderly, came to our class very upset. And we said, what's happening? He says, you know, in the black staff room, there was a cup short, so I didn't have a cup to drink tea. So the person who made tea went upstairs, because there were plenty of cups upstairs in the white staff room, and brought a cup and poured tea for me. So as I was just starting to drink the tea, the white teacher, he named him, came and just stood in front of me until I finished the tea. When I finished drinking the tea, he took the cup and smashed it on the floor and said, so that it never finds its way to the white staff room again. So at that point, I was convinced that we had to fight this system. Then Verwoerd was killed when I was there. We had to leave class when those news came. And then, on the day he was buried, we were collected in the hall. We had to listen to the funeral through radio. Anyway, that was my formative years in politics. So by the time I went to university, and when SASO was started, I was already conscious that this system needs to be fought. Then we started SASO. I was at University of Zululand then. That's what it was called, doing my BSc. We started SASO, and we then used to visit different universities for sports, but also for politics, but under the guise of sports. So we'll go to the Western Cape, we'll go to Tefluo, we'll go to Roma in Swaziland. So we then decided we must go to Roma in Swaziland because comrades were there. Comrade Tabo, JZ, Comrade Shomo and others. Sbundebele. Because we wanted to connect with them. But we couldn't do it openly, so we had a sports event there, and then in the evenings we would meet with them. And of course we would, at medical school, we used to listen to Radio Freedom, but also through SASO, we also used to have projects like literacy training. We'll go out to the communities and do literacy training. During holidays, we would do boreholes for water and so on. But after joining the ANC underground, that's when trouble started. We were working, and then we get a message. Sbundebele was a librarian at the university in Swaziland. So he went legally So he would come in and out. He was like a courier, underground, but overground he was just a librarian. He drove a car which was called the Marina. So we get messages, the Marina has been taken. So we knew there was trouble. So one day, medical school was surrounded. We were still at Allen Taylor residence, which is near the oil refinery in Meerbank. Wentworth, yes. So they surrounded us before coming to our rooms. So we decided, how do we try and make sure they don't arrest us? So in their list, I was the only woman they wanted. The others were men. So I decided to go to the male hostel because I knew the people who had my photo would be searching the female hostel. So I decided to go to the women's hostel, and I got a theater cap, put it, and when they came to my room, I said, no, I'm a nurse. I'm just visiting my boyfriend here. So they passed. But they arrested me for trespass because, yes, those days, if you were in a place you are not supposed to be in, you were trespassing and you'd be arrested. So I was arrested for trespass. I think they wanted me for. Fortunately, for trespass, when I got in, there were nurses who were arrested, and they said, why? I said, so I told them that I'm a trespasser. They mustn't talk about me being. So we were given a warning because we had tried the following day in the local magistrate's office. So from there, I had to leave the country because I realized I had no space anymore in South Africa. So I left the country through Botswana. We were fortunate. I crossed with Ralph Mkijima. He was very reluctant to go with me. He was saying, going with a woman, she's going to get tired and this. But I come from a rural area. We don't get tired. So we asked one old man about the situation there. He gave us very good tips. He said to us, cross in broad daylight. Don't wait for the evening. Because during the evening they patrol. But if you cross now, they are sleeping. And then he said, even when you have crossed, be very careful of people who come and talk to you because they've planted spies. So, especially if it's white people talking to you in a South African language, be very careful. Anyway, we crossed. We ended up in Lobadzi. From Lobadzi, we went to Gaborone. Gaborone, there were two houses. There was the Black Consciousness House because some of the Black Consciousness people had also left the country. So we went to eat first, and then General Keith Mokwape and Snuki Zikalala were there in the ANC house. And then they came to pick us up. Then to cut the long story short, where I ended up in Tanzania. Whilst I was there, they said, because I was in my 5th year of my medical studies, I must first go and finish my studies, which was fine. But they asked me to attend a special summit, which was in Ethiopia, Addis, that was in solidarity with what was happening in Soweto. Because by the time I left, the Soweto uprisings had happened. And so I went there. The ANC asked me to speak on their behalf, which I did. The summit was just 3 days. So I left Dar es Salaam for 3 days. But one comrade said to me, who I was working with, because when I was there, they put me in Radio Freedom, so I was part of the Radio Freedom for a short while. Then the comrade there said, "Hey, comrade, when you leave, take everything that's yours." I said, "No, but I'm only going for 3 days." He says, "This is the ANC, take everything." So I packed my bags, my one big suitcase. And then the comrade who was fetching me said, "No, we are going for 3 days." So I said, "No, but the comrade said I must take everything." And he said, "No, I'll keep the big suitcase in my office, but just take a small one for your 3 days." I went, but I only came back to Dar maybe 4 years later after that. And that comrade was very right, I must take everything. Because from Addis, I was then sent to Ghana. Those days there was the Africa Students Union to go and address them. From there I was sent to, then it was Czechoslovakia. There was a conference, and it was also to commemorate the students who died during the Second World War. So from there, I ended up being told I must stay in Britain, I must finish my studies there, I must do solidarity work there. So we were very busy with anti-apartheid movement work. I eventually became the chairperson of the youth section in UK. First time I went to Cuba, it was a youth festival there, so I led a delegation from the UK, and there were lots of ANC comrades coming from different places. That's why I met Comrade Fidel for the first time, which was a great honor to me. It was 1978. And to see Cuba and their health system, I was very interested in it because, as you know, I just qualified then. So in the UK, we did a lot of things, but I also, the highest position I held there, besides the chair of the youth section, was the chair of the regional political committee, which was the highest committee you have in a region. Then, after working there, I also established a trust, Health and Refugee Trust, to assist our comrades in the camps with medical supplies and things like that. So we were raising money there for all the camps and for Mazimbu and so on. So we were very busy there. And we were also meeting comrades from Lusaka. They would come, from Comrade OR, all of them. Comrade Nzo would come, Comrade Nkobi. And one of the things that scared you most was when you were asked to carry money from London to Lusaka. You don't sleep in that plane. You guard that briefcase with your life. You are even scared to go to the loo. You are even scared to go to the loo because what would you say if ANC money was lost? What would you say? So that was one of the scariest tasks. You are in a plane, every time they open, you look. But anyway, eventually, I then went to Lusaka. No, I didn't go to Lusaka permanently. I went to Lusaka. Then they decided where to deploy me. Before I left the UK, because they decided I was going to be deployed in Swaziland, I had to go and get training secretly because very few people should know because I was going to Swaziland. In Swaziland, I was just going as a Dlamini doctor. In fact, the Swazis thought they'd recruited me. Because what the ANC did was, when they were invited to the National Day or whatever event in the Swazi High Commission, they decided to send me that time. So when I got there, the High Commissioner was excited. Oh, you're a doctor, you're a Dlamini. What are you doing here when Swazis need doctors? So I said, oh, okay. He says, no, you must go and work in Swaziland. We are short of doctors. So I said, oh, okay, I'll hear from you. Then within a week, I had forms to fill to go to Swaziland. They thought they recruited me, but it was the ANC plan for me to go there. Because we had to go there and work underground, but have a proper cover. Again, I was sent with Ralph. I went and worked in Babane Government Hospital. He worked in Hlatikulu. But we were part of the underground work. And not to take you a long time, we worked there with the Natal machinery. But something very tragic happened. The Natal machinery was asked to go and report in Mozambique. And they said to me, okay, comrades, there are comrades who are going to come from home. When they come, just let us know so that one or two of us can come back and service them. So I said, fine. Then the comrades came. Then I called. Then I think I got JZ at the flat. There was a special flat there. Then he said, no, they've just said goodbye. They are coming back. So there's no need to talk to them. They are crossing tonight. They'll be there. So I said, fine. So they didn't call me during the night. They didn't call me in the morning. I went to work. They hadn't called me. Then as I was coming for lunch, I heard the news that Maputo had been attacked, Matola. Then I thought, oh, maybe they are busy talking to Matola, that's why they are not contacting me. Then I called Maputo. And then they said, hey, comrade, if you are standing, just sit down. So I said, why? So I sat down. They said, hey, your comrades are gone. So I said, but you said they were leaving. He says, no, they were leaving. And then one of them, unfortunately, there was a guy who was a spy within the machinery. He said to them, no, we can't go today. The transport to take you from the border will only come tomorrow, so we must still sleep here. But he didn't sleep with them. He just stayed with them until about midnight, which means he was just communicating with his bosses. And then around that time, he said, no, he's going. His wife was in Maputo. They were in Matola. And they were attacked, and they were killed. So it was that's one of the tragic, amongst many other tragic events. They were killed. So we had to attend the funeral. And then when I was coming back, just an anecdote to show how spies work. When I was there, this same guy and another one asked if they could use the car I was using whilst we were waiting to go back the following day after the funeral. So they take the car, they are running errands, they are ANC people, why not? Then they delay us. By the time they come, hey, sorry, comrades, where are your cases? They take them, they pack. we go. When we get to the border in Swaziland, they used to search our cars. So they were relaxed, they were standing there, they open the boot, they are searching. And then they say, Mage, yini le? It's our things that are in the boot. They say, no, come here. When I get there, there's a box of detonators and a book on how to make bombs. Oh. Now, what is this? So they say, Dokotela, what is this? So I say to them, no, I'll tell you the truth. As you know, I was attending an ANC funeral. People who belong to the ANC, they use the car. They must have forgotten these things in the boot. Why do you think I would just leave things like this? Because I would hide them if I had them. So they say, okay, Dokotela, last warning. So anyway, I escaped. Then went back to, after 5 years, I was sent back to the UK. Solidarity work was always there. We went to different countries. In fact, probably there's no country in Europe, in Western Europe, that we didn't attend. We went to Russia. As youth, we were invited by the Komsomol. Komsomol was the youth part of the Communist Party. So, eventually, I went back to Lusaka. Then I was in the health committee of the ANC then, but I was also in the women's section. It wasn't called Women's League then, we were called Women's Section. Then when 1990 came, women were a very central part of the struggle. Whether it's solidarity work, whether it's underground work, they were a central part. To the extent, this is not said loudly, to the extent that when the ANC was unbanned, 3 comrades came back to talk, that Maduna, JZ, and Matthew Posa. Then it was agreed that exiles can come back. What did the men do? They sent women first. Yes. The first batch of exiles to arrive here were women. Banzani bezwa ngathi amanzi ngobhoko lwabo. Because nobody was sure what's going to happen. We were led by Mashope and Boma Sperepere, Boma Njobe and others, Balega, and we came back as the first batch of exiles. And then we were dispersed to different provinces. I was dispersed to KZN. Then it wasn't KZN. Natal was divided into 3 regions. So I was sent to Southern region eventually. But I was told on the first day I must report Kubabu Herikwale Merisbek. I was fetched. Yes. And things were bad there. There was, just like they were here in Gauteng, there was lots of fighting. I had Tutu with me. She was still breastfeeding at the time. So Makosi Khoza was sent by Ubabukwala when she was still okay. Was sent by Ubabukwala and an Anglican priest to go and fetch me from the airport. I went there. We drove to Pietermaritzburg. When we just entered Edendale Road, where you can see from a distance, we're in this Kumbi driven by an Anglican priest. We saw about 4 men with big rifles. Because we were far, we didn't know whether they were AKs or R5s. They just blocked the road. And the Anglican priest said, listen, I'm not going to stop I'm going to go to them at 200 kilometers an hour. Whatever the speed of this, the limit, I will. So that's what he did. I think they realized that they are going to die if they keep standing there. Then they came off the road. But one of them shot at us. But with God's grace and ANC ancestors, the bullet didn't hit anyone. I always think that's why Ututu is so scared when she goes to funerals and there are bullets. There are shots there, because she was small when that happened. So anyway, we got to Ubabkwala. Ubabkwala, when we are telling him this story, he says, yes, Comrade Nkosazana, that's a befitting welcome, because that's what you are going to deal with every day. And he was right. So I then stayed there for about 2 weeks or so before I was then dispatched to Southern Natal. But that was a very good place to start, because I got to know everything about what was happening. The good, the bad, the difficult, the dangerous, everything. And we revisited refugees in the churches and so on, just to see what was really happening. But when I told, only my brother-in-law had a phone, my other siblings and home, we didn't have a phone. When I called him to say, I'm back, he said, Sbar, I'm not going to, let me call your sister. She must break that news, because I don't believe it. But it was true. Anyway, when we got to Southern Natal, some of the comrades were sent to Northern Natal, Stories and Maud, and others were sent to other provinces. We had to then be part of establishing the ANC branches, Youth League branches, Women's League branches. It was not easy, but I'll tell you something about what was the attitude around women and leadership. There are many stories, but I'll just tell you one. Went to Shongweni. Shongweni, we're going to establish all three the same day. So when we came to the Women's League, everyone raised their hand. They raised one name. You point this one, it's the same name, it's the same name. And the comrade says, no, not ready to be chair of the. Everyone tries, she says no. Until an old man in the corner raises his hand. So I'm thinking, I'm chairing this session. So I'm thinking, how? But I pointed him. And he said, don't worry, umakoti wakwami lo, ushade nendodana yami, uzostenda. And I'm going to tell my son that I gave her permission to stand. And she stood. She was very popular, obviously she was very good, but she still had that Guti, my husband, my in-laws, until one day, I was part of that forum from Southern Natal. They tell us about this sunset clause. Now, okay, they explain that the sunset clause is for the ones who are there. The sunset clause is for those who are there, not to be just dismissed. So then I raise my hand. I say, okay, I understand the sunset clause, but there's no sunset without sunrise. Where is the sunrise clause? We need the sunrise clause. So they did put the sunrise clause. They didn't call it that. But it was one sentence in the interim constitution. If you go back to it, you'll find it. It said, you can retrench in the interest of transformation. That was the sunrise clause. So I say, how that no. I was in all the list, the province to province, national to national, province to national, but I'd chosen province to province. It says, oh, okay. If you are not sure, it's fine. There's still a lot of horse trading with the other parties. Then, the day before, people were supposed to go to Cape Town to be sworn in, he calls me. Nkosazana, consider yourself as Minister of Health. Bye-bye. That was that. Now I'm thinking, my children are small, but how do I say to a comrade who spent 27 years not seeing his children, how do I say I can't go to Cape Town because my children are small? So that was that. So I had to go to Cape Town. In fact, I think I was the only person there who didn't have a new dress, who was not accompanied. I was alone because I only got the message. So I went. Of course, we had what was called the GNU. There were 18 of us. We were in the majority, vast majority. There were a sprinkling of IFP, sprinkling of NP, yeah. But it didn't bother us. We used to even have our own caucus before going to cabinet if there were serious issues, so that we go there, we know the ANC line. And we're in the majority, and mainly I think that GNU just worked to draw the constitution, because after the constitution was adopted, the NP left. Only the IFP, I think there were only 3 of them remained for the rest of the 5 years. But it was tough because you are Minister of Health, but there are about, how many departments of health were there? All the homelands had, each one had its Department of Health. The provinces, each one had its Department of Health. And you had to bring all of them and form one national department. So it wasn't an easy task. So what I then thought was, I must keep, for the first year, I must keep the DG that I found there. But I was criticized until I was even called in front of the NWC to say I'm the only one who hasn't changed the DG. So I said, yes, I haven't. And I outlined why. I said, you see, I'm going to put one Department of Health, and I'm introducing ANC health policy. And once that is done, I'm then going to advertise all the posts. Now, I can't do that if I don't have a person who these officials trust. Because I'm like a cherry on top of a cake that I don't know. So I have to work well with him so that they trust him. By the time they wake up, it will be too late. So I explained this to the NEC, so NWC. So the NWC said, oh, we wish everyone had done that. So they left me with that DG. He was helpful. I think he had, in a way, crossed the Rubicon himself. Because he was very helpful. Even in answering questions in Parliament, he would say, no, you see, answering these people in Parliament, you have two options. Either to give them full information, depending on who they are, or to answer the question, but without giving anything. So he helped me a lot. He gave me lots of tips because he had been there. So after a year, I had also told him that after a year, then he can go. Of course, when Madiba came, some of you who were not very young will remember that his first speech, he said, in the first 100 days, children under 6 and pregnant women must have free health care. And said there must be school feeding. Then, I think the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first MINMEC was a health MINMEC because we had to deal with this. Comrade Ambi Masondo was the health MEC here then. We had to meet and say, how do we deal with this? So we met. I also went around the country just to see what health facilities exist. Because you can say free health care, but if there are no facilities, it's meaningless. So we had to go around the country. A lot of places, they would say, no, we have mobile clinics. So when you ask them, these health people, okay, mobile clinics, how often does it visit? Those who were good would say once a month. Others would say even once in 3 months. And I say, but that's like winning a lotto to say if it comes once in 3 months, you must make sure that your illness only comes then. So we then had a plan to build clinics so that this free healthcare can be meaningful. We built clinics. We didn't have tenders then. I went to CSIR and I said to CSIR, we are health workers. We're not project managers, we're not constructors. So can CSIR do this for us? We're going to have 3 types of clinics, a small clinic, a medium size, and a health center. These are the specifications. Do the architectural work. When they are done, we said, okay, do the bill of quantities for each. They did the bill of quantities. So you can see how much we'd saved just from that. Because we didn't need architects, we didn't need quantity surveyors. The constructors wouldn't cheat us and say they need 120 bags of cement when they need 100. So we had all that done. So we said to CSIR, we're not project managers, give us a project manager to manage this. So the first 5-year clinics were actually were managed by CSIR. And we built lots of those clinics. And people were then able. But then the problem was doctors. There were very few doctors. That's why we had to go to Cuba, because I remembered the Cuban system. And also when Castro was here for the inauguration, one of the things he said to President Mandela, health and education must be your start, so that people feel there is a difference, there is a new government. So then I went to Cuba. Those who are not very young will remember what resistance that we got, trying to get Cuban doctors. Until I said, that time it was called the Medical Council. So I said to the Medical Council, give me 10 professors, you choose them. I'll take them to Cuba. They look at the curriculum, they look at the health system, then they must tell us whether we should bring Cuban doctors or not. So I led that delegation of 10 professors. Some came from the Free State, from different provinces. We went. And they were so impressed, they said, Cuban doctors can come. And that's how Cuban doctors came. And then I thought, well, we must also train our own doctors. Then we spoke to the Cubans to say, okay, whilst we have your doctors, but can we also train? They agreed. But the provinces had to send the students, because the money for training was with the provinces. I think the first batch was only from Mpumalanga, if I remember correctly. There were 10. Then I went with them. And then Castro came here for the non-aligned. And he said to me, you know, now I know why you only sent 10. Before I knew, I was saying, if you were my Minister of Health, I would have sacked you. Because you have more than 300 Cuban doctors and you are only sending 10 students. How long will it take you to just replace the 300? So he says, but now I understand. So the provinces then started buying in and sending. I hope we're not going to close it, but that's not my space right now. But that's how that came about. So rural hospitals had doctors, specialists, through the Cuban cooperation. The other things we did, some of you may not know that during that time, you were not allowed to put your parents on your medical aid. We fought. The medical aid people were refusing, saying they'll collapse. And we say, how will you collapse? Because people will pay the premiums. Just to show what impact that had on people. Now I was going to Malaysia. I was no longer Minister of Health, I was Foreign Affairs. I get off, we got at the airport, then we get into a train to take us to the airport building. Then as we get off the train, I hear a voice behind saying, Dr. Zuma. So I look behind, and it's a white elderly couple. So I go to them. I thought maybe they needed help or something. So they say, no, we just wanted to say thank you. We owe you big time. So I said, why? They said, since we retired, this is our first holiday. Because we were scared to spend our money because of medical bills. Now we are on our children's medical aid. That's why we have this holiday. So then I realized, I thought it was only my parents and our parents who were poor, who were struggling with this, but even everyone. So then I realized it had a lot of impact. I'm not going to talk about others because termination of pregnancy was very controversial. But why did we do it? So, lots of women were dying every year from backstreet abortions. And we said, How can we save them? And it was in the ANC health policy, reproductive health rights. But it was so controversial that Madiba says to me one day, hey, you must go to the Eastern Cape. The Amakosi, they are very angry with this ukomfa. That's what they call it in the Eastern Cape. Ukomfa. You must go and explain to them. So I went. Hey, they were full there in the hall. So I said to them, before I explain this, I want to ask 2 questions. The first question, I want you who have never heard of somebody dying of a backstreet abortion, whether your neighbor, your relative, your colleague, somebody in the community, if you have never heard of it, raise your hand. Nobody did. So I said, okay. My second question is, if you had a way of saving their lives, would you have said they must die anyway? Those who say they would have said they must die anyway, raise your hands. Nobody did. So I said, now we can talk. Because this law is nothing but to save those people. It doesn't kick in until a woman has decided to terminate her pregnancy. So it kicks in to say, do it safely. So by the time I left, they were fine. They were fine. But even religious people, I was threatened with excommunication from my church. Then I wrote back to the Archbishop to say, the God we serve is a very compassionate God. He will understand when I explain in front of him why I did this. But what I didn't know is that you are now a judge on earth. So I was not excommunicated, fortunately. I entered the NEC not through election. In 1993, when Comrade OR and Comrade Krisani died, they needed to co-opt 2 members. I was one of the people who were the 2. It was Penuel Maduna. I think they decided to co-opt younger people. So they co-opted Penuel Maduna and myself in 1993. That's how I first got into the NEC. I can't lie and say I was elected. But subsequently then, I was elected. But the other thing I want to talk about is just before the election of 94, during the negotiations, Comrade Nomvula will remember. During the negotiations, the first team of negotiators were just men. They decided they are going to negotiate the fate of this country alone. And when we complained, they then established something called the Gender Advisory Committee. And I was put in that committee with others. So we sat there and we said, what are we doing here? Advisory means they send something, we advise, they take it or not take it. Advice you are not forced to take. So there is no point sitting here. We went back to the Women's League and we said, no, there must be women negotiators. The ANC said, okay, we'll take it to the other parties. The other parties said, what do women want here? What do they know about negotiations? We don't have women who can negotiate. So we said to the ANC, led by Mashope and other stalwarts, we said to the ANC, okay, if there are 4 negotiators, the party that doesn't have women will only have 2 out of 4. The one that has women will have 2. So go and tell them that. Then they realized we were serious, but they were not willing to give in. So our comrades, leaders, said, no, we must mobilize women. After Poipoto massacre, the negotiations, if you remember, were halted. Then we said, they are not going back until you are there. We mobilized women across the country, and we said they must come to Kempton Park. We are going to sit in there. They kill us if they want, but they are not going to start. And we knew international media would be there, everyone would be there. When they saw that this was a serious thing, they then gave in. And then instead of us sitting in there, we were now celebrating the fact that there are going to be women negotiators, Bo Comrade Balega, and I think Mavivi went there. So, as women, it looks like we have to fight for everything, even obvious things. Because negotiating was obvious that women had to be there, but it wasn't. So women, I'm glad that you are starting your honoring, because I hope we are not ending with us. I'm glad that you are starting with women, because women tend to be edited out of history. Or if they are in a book or in a history document, they are a footnote. So you are breaking that mold. And we are leading as Gauteng, as you should. So, foreign affairs, I'll just highlight a few things. I think South Africa's chaired the Security Council for the first time during that time. And those who would remember, we launched, at that time, it was the Organization of African Unity. Then there were negotiations to move it to African Union. The African Union was launched here in South Africa when we were in foreign affairs. It was foreign affairs, it was not called DICO then, that's why I'm saying foreign affairs. There were also negotiations. You remember, some of you will remember that the DRC negotiations took place here in Sunset that ushered the new elected government after the death of President Kabila and all the problems that were there. The negotiations took place here, Sun City. We're involved in the Burundi. The defense force was, our soldiers were there in Burundi and so on. We also were involved in the Comoros. We chaired the committee that was doing the peace negotiations in the Comoros. Because two things were happening in the Comoros. There had been a coup, and one of the islands wanted to secede. So we had to find a solution that they don't secede and we have elections. So there were many things. So there's no timer here. Let me round off. Foreign affairs, I was there for 10 years. There were lots of things that happened during that period. President Begi was pushing the African Renaissance at the time. And also, on the continent, we were pushing that women must participate. Because people forget, both here in South Africa and on the continent, that the first non-racial organization in South Africa was FETSO. It was formed by women. The first continental organization was PAO, a year before the Organization of African Unity. But because things get edited out of history, we don't remember that. So we were trying to ensure that women's views and youth views are heard in summits of the AU. So we used to have a pre-summit meeting of women. We were led by Madame Diop at the time from Senegal. Then we would make sure that we push the women's agenda there. In South Africa, you remember then the racism conference was also held here. And the WSSD was held in Johannesburg. The racism conference was held in Durban. So lots of things were happening. Home Affairs, he can tell you. We were with him in Home Affairs at the time. So the first thing we did, we thought, let's hear from the citizens themselves, because the officials won't tell us everything. So we asked 702 and later Metro that once a month we have a talk show where citizens tell us what the problems are and how they think they should be resolved. At first I used to go alone with maybe one official. Later I went with the whole management so that they can hear for themselves. So the changes we made, some of them were citizen suggestions, because we don't have the monopoly of ideas. We must always accept that and ensure that we take other people's views. Then, when I thought I was doing a bit well in Home Affairs, I was called to Lutuli House one day. Actually, I was here in Gauteng with the provincial meeting on that committee that was sometimes called the Nkosazana report thing. We're with Comrade Naledi in that committee. So we've always somehow collided. So I called Lutuli House. Then I say, what have I done? I go there, I find the officials there. They say, no, we've decided that we're going to field you as a SADC candidate to the AU. Just like that. Well, they spoke. Then, that is history. First round I lost, but nobody won because we had to get 2/3 to win. So we both lost. Neither of the candidates got 2/3. Then the second round I got the 2/3. I got lots of support from colleagues. They went all around the countries campaigning. It wasn't my colleagues really did a lot of work. Then at the AU, one of the things that used to happen there, because fortunately I'd been foreign minister for 10 years, so I understood it. One of the things that would happen there, which I hated, a president would speak on a subject for an hour. Another one will speak for 30 minutes. Another one for 2 hours. And then when they're tired, they get into their planes, they go. By the time the summit finishes, it's ambassadors that we are talking to. So when we got there, we said that must stop. So we introduced something that says they must first, when they start a topic, say whether they're going to speak for 10 minutes or 7 minutes or 5 minutes or 3 minutes. Once they've agreed on that time, there's an automatic timer. It just switches off your mic. Then you hear President talking, the mic is gone. But they got used to it, and they actually liked it because meetings finished on time with them still there. So, but I remember one Minister of Agriculture who was attending an agriculture meeting for the first time. I think he hadn't heard that there is that system, so we cut him. And he went and reported to his president. The president says, they cut me too. So, but we then said, there are lots of different documents on the continent. Then in 2013, we're celebrating 50 years of the Organization of African Unity, now AU. So we said, after the celebration, they said we must do a strategic plan. Then the officials told me the strategic plan we normally do is just for 4 years. So I said, okay, we're celebrating 50 years. Let's do something and say, what do we want people to say about this organization in 50 years? We know what we have said now. And this 50 years was not a brain child of mine. Those who will remember our history, in 1945, the Pan-Africanists met in Manchester, UK. They decided then that the continent must be decolonized within 50 years. And other than Western Sahara, it was decolonized within 50 years. We were the last on the 49th year. And it was important to put that timeline because then they put structures to make sure that that happens. So then I said, no, let's do that ourselves instead of this 4 year. Then we'll take the 50 years, break it into 10 years, into 5 years, into 1 year. To this year, this is what we're going to do. The 5 years, this is what we're going to do. In the 10 years, and so on. So, but that's how Agenda 2063 was born. It wasn't us who drew Agenda 2063. We consulted widely, different sectors. Some of the vet students were there. Youth came. And we had youth, we had women, we had trade unions, we had religious leaders, we had all sectors, scientists, sectors of society saying, what would you like to see this continent doing and achieving in the next 50 years? So we got ideas from everyone, and then we put that document together. It's not just the officials who sat and wrote it. One of the flagships was the Africa, the Continental Free Trade. We launched the negotiations here in Gauteng in 2015, during that summit of 2015. We said, we're launching the negotiations. These negotiations must be done by end of 2017. Then people said, hey, you can see she's so naive. How can trade negotiations take such a short time? And I said, but it's not God who said they must take long. It's us. So we can make it short, we can make it long. Fortunately, by 2018, they were signing the agreement. So now, I want to say to Gauteng, particularly to you, the African Continental Free Trade is not going to work unless you are really part of it, both in manufacturing and in trade. Because you can't trade if you don't manufacture. And you must lead as Gauteng. Yes, others must also, but you as Gauteng must lead. You have a very pivotal role to play. I was very happy a few months ago. I visited Gibela. It was so refreshing to see young South Africans, 45% of them women, producing those trains, making those trains. They took me, I went there for almost for the whole day. They took me step by step until they took me onto the train to drive. So it was just so nice to see these young scientists, these young engineers. And we can do that in many other sectors. And Gauteng leadership, we are here. You must look at that. Just a few lessons, because I don't have a timer, so I don't know whether I still have time. Oh, they say I have 5 minutes.
How many minutes?
Okay, in the 5 minutes that I have, I want to say that Gauteng leadership, we have a big responsibility. During our struggle, Gauteng played a very big role in the revolution. You can look at the events that took place. I won't mention them in the interest of time. Just cast your mind. You know the events that took place here. You know the leadership that came from all different provinces but worked from here. You remember during the underground, even people were executed. So you can't drop the ball now. You can't drop the ball. In the economy, you are the hub. You are the heart of our economy. If the heart stops, what happens? We're dead. And it's all in whose hands? In your hands. And others who are leaders who are not here. You know this thing of things being in your hand. I'll tell you a joke. When we were in KZN during that time of young people had a term when they want to kill you, but bazokunqaka. So a group of young people decided that there was a isangoma that was telling people things in the community. They said, no, we want to go and test whether he knows what he's talking about. If he doesn't, somnqaka. So they said, okay, what are we going to ask him to tell us? Eventually they decided they are going to carry a little bird under the sleeve of one comrade's jacket. And they're going to ask this man, what are they carrying? Then one of them says, what if he gets it right? Then other one says, we'll ask him whether it's alive or dead. If he says it's alive, you kill it and take it out. If he says it's dead, you take it. Then they say, yeah, no, somnqaka. So they went. They asked him, sweating and sweating, because they told him if he tells lies, they're going to nqaka him. Then eventually he said, no, he was talking in Zulu, in Petinyoni. Then they looked and smiled and said, yes, is it dead or alive? Hey, then he was sweating and sweating, and then suddenly said, hey, Bafana, angikhuluma impilo yenyoni esezandleni zenu. Impilo yenyoni isezandleni zenu. Angeke ngikhuluma indaba yayo. If you want it dead, it will be dead. If you want it alive, it will be alive. So he saved his life. Right? So if something is in your hands, then you must deal with it. All the poor people aspire to come to Gauteng because they see the lights, they see Johannesburg, gold, what? They think they can get everything when they come here. And of course, Gauteng has cities that are not endless. So it's up to you to work with other provinces so that they also develop. so that you are not flooded with all of us. Now I'm going home. I was a migrant here in Gauteng, because everything is happening in Gauteng. But I'll talk about that maybe later. But I'm just saying that you must always think about the people, especially the poor, when you make decisions and policies. How is this decision going to affect them? Is it going to make their life better, create a better life for them, or is it going to make it difficult? 2, stand for the truth. Stand for the truth. Even if you have to stand alone, stand for it. Discipline, yes, but the truth must go with discipline. If you are not disciplined, there is nothing you can achieve. So, women, if you leave out women, there is no country in the world that can develop to its full potential unless women are emancipated. Even OR said that no country can boast of being free unless its women are free. Are we? Not yet. We're getting there, but not yet. But what I'm saying to you, defend the gains of the revolution and push the frontiers. You must bequeath to the next generation a better Gauteng, a better South Africa than the one you have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dlamini Zuma. Will the Secretary please read the third order?
Thank you, Speaker. Addressed by Dr. Naledi Pandor.
Dr. Pandor? This I must acknowledge, Dr. Dlamini Zuma, after what you said, he allowed the lady to read the third order, so he heard you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. That was an absolutely amazing contribution by Dr. Dlamini Zuma. Unfortunately, I'm not as good extemporaneously, and so I prepare what I say. So, allow me to begin. Honourable Speaker, Honourable Premier Lesotho, Honourable members of the Gauteng Executive Council, Honourable members of the Legislature, fellow honoured guest, Dr. Dlamini Zuma, our families, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Speaker, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the Honourable Premier for giving me the privilege of being acknowledged by the entire legislature of our most important province, Gauteng. I truly feel humbled at being celebrated in this way, and while still present, to hear these encouraging words. It is also so incredible to be linked to the month of August and thus to our great leaders of the Women's March of 1956. Those women were women of courage, of fortitude, and of an amazing organizational ability. We should never forget that they are the original nation builders, uniting across race and class and seeking to create a united nation in which the inherent dignity of all human beings is recognized and respected in policy and practice. I can only describe the opportunities I was given to serve by our organization, the African National Congress, and by the people of our country as the greatest moments of my life. When I was a young girl living in exile, wondering what I was doing in Lesotho, in Zambia, in England, and in Botswana, I never thought I would one day serve in a democratic South Africa's cabinet. I thank my mother and father, Joe and Fikile Matthews, for instilling love for my distant country and its people in me from a very early age. I thank my mom for making me sing Nansi Ndoda Emnyama Ferevot daily so that I would know what my focus should be. My father's lessons on the struggle, on the role of our leaders, and especially his consistent admiration for Walter Sisulu, who he said was the hardest working on-the-ground organizer who never sought fame. My father's insights on the importance of the framing of the Freedom Charter and the insights and role of our grandfather, Professor Z.K. Matthews, on why such a charter was critical, groomed my own love for human rights. My political beginnings are strongly linked to my passion for education. I began teaching in the United Kingdom in a difficult, rough boys' school with many working class children whose main desire was to complete what was compulsory schooling and get out of school as quickly as possible, and for some to then be on the dole for unemployed youth. I was convinced I could generate love for education in these boys, and I invented every teaching trick I could to persuade and cajole them. I then moved to teach in Botswana, where I connected with my comrades of the 1976 revolutionary fighters. I later came to realize that not all of them were Congress people, but because I'd only known the ANC in my young life, I treated them all as members of the ANC. And I'm sure I annoyed them hugely by that practice. Once more, being this education-interested individual, I argued with these 1976 generation that while I admired their desire to learn Marxist-Leninist theory, passing O-levels and getting a degree would equip them better to advance the revolution. Some of the comrades ended up in Lobatse in Botswana, and then were moved to Kanye, where unfortunately they landed in the school I was teaching in. Shame. They landed at the wrong school, because while they wanted to help my husband Sharif in the underground work he was doing, transporting guns and all sorts of things, I was more interested in them learning the finer points of Macbeth and the poetry of Cantemba and its link to our history. Having completed my stint teaching in Botswana, I wended my way slowly back home. I was ready at that time to go anywhere as long as I was in South Africa, anywhere where I would be useful and invisible. Those who know me know that I love being somewhat invisible, as I regard it as a very important organizing tool. I don't go around profiling myself hugely. It doesn't help to organize. I landed at first in Taung, in then Bophuthatswana, and I used night school, which I started, to organize. I did this everywhere I landed, in Taung, at the university in Mafeking, at the university in Cape Town. I had literature, I had videos, and I educated politically and literally. It is through this educational organizing format that I learned how to be subversive. I could turn the most innocent biblical verse at assembly into a week-long political exercise for all my classes. So if you talked about being meek and mild, I would use it for a week to energize not to accept being meek and mild. I was able to recruit hundreds of young people in this way and also to ensure that they were educated. I still had family in London, and they were able to send me great teaching material that I even managed to quietly bring into Soweto on many occasions. I bumped into many roadblocks, and I could use my English accent to good effect to get by. My brother, no soldier believed that a person who spoke like me was carrying what I was. My brother Khosi, who's sitting up there, was a rich source of all this educational material. Beyond these early political lessons, I learned that hard work, dedication, and integrity are key to social progress. All these attributes could be found in our great leaders, particularly the iconic O.R. Tambo, who my father believed was underrated by a democratic South Africa, as well as in President Nelson Mandela. You, our youth today, must all try to be leaders that seek to emulate them. My greatest disappointment in our politics is the realization that some of us lacked integrity and were only in politics for self-enrichment. I hope that all of you will be leaders that will be as brave as Dr. Dlamini Zuma when she brought us improved health environments by taking on the tobacco lobby. And that you will be as insightful as her in developing Agenda 2063 as the development blueprint of Africa. Of course, I'm sometimes wary of blueprints because people think when they've developed a document, the work is done. But the key issue is to translate the document into the practical realization of the objectives. And so I do believe in less document, more action. I think we have sufficient policy in our country, but what we lack is delivery and action on our policy. And I would be more interested in which policy you think is irrelevant rather than which policy you want to add. Our people need change, not more paper. And statute doesn't of itself deliver change. You cannot exactly mirror the contribution of Dr. Dlamini Zuma. But what she has done is to create a foundation to do what many have deemed to be impossible: the achievement of the fundamental transformation of Africa. When I was Minister of Science and Technology, I agreed to advance the bold project initiated and supported by President Mbeki of securing the square kilometer array for Africa. There were many who believed this was a futile endeavor, who did not think Africa was capable of big science. We won the bid, and we are creating science history for research and innovation by South Africa and Africa. I'm sure you're all aware that as Africans, we are often compelled to aim low, not to have belief in our ability and capacity. I firmly reject such notions and believe very strongly that in whatever we do, quality and excellence are imperative and are possible. I have seen that over centuries of colonization, we have internalized notions of inadequacy and do not always strive for stellar performance. Do not always strive for clean cities, for clinics offering high-level primary health care, for quality housing for our people, and for clean, healthy communities. These are attributes I believe revolutionaries should inculcate in our people so that we build a truly transformed, modern, progressive society. I believe that true change requires such ambition. You need to make informal settlements smart cities, to graduate more female engineers and ensure economic growth that is above inflation and that creates work and business opportunities. We've been told we cannot do these things, and we have slowly but surely come to believe we cannot do them. This is why our streets are dirty. This is why we don't have proper electricity. This is why we have water outages. This is why we are not quality oriented. We need to remove from ourselves the colonial conscientization that we are less than and begin to aim high. Honorable Premier, I followed your State of the Province address, and I must say it's the only one I watched. And I fully support the ambitious agenda you have set out for the province. I join you in the belief that this can be a glorious province of immense opportunity, and I believe you will achieve the goals you have set out in your address. Do call on us, myself and Dr. Dlamini Zuma, if you need reviewers. We have a bit of time on our hands. We have a bit of time on our hands, and we are ready to assist. I would like today to thank my family for constant love and support, and all the officials in the departments I have served in for their commitment and hard work. I thank the people of Gauteng for their principled support for freedom and justice for the people of Palestine, and their support for lasting peace between Israel and Palestine. The notion has developed that when we support freedom for Palestinians, we are anti-Israeli. This is absolute dishonesty by those who object to Palestinians being treated equally as human beings. We believe in peace and security for Israel, as well as full freedom and justice for the Palestinian people. I request all of you present here to continue your international solidarity for the people of Palestine until, as President Mandela said, the people of Palestine are finally free. We have been left with a legacy we must honor. when our icons make such statements, it is not because they are good polemics. It is an agenda that they are providing to us as South Africans, which says that you as South Africans have fought a particular struggle, which had a very distinctive character compared to other colonial struggles. The nature of that struggle and your foresight in entrenching international solidarity as a part of a struggle for freedom means wherever oppression arises, as South Africa, there is a role for you to play. This is why we cannot desert the people of Palestine. Our country, South Africa, has bravely championed support for this cause in full alignment with the wishes of President Mandela. Of course, as the naysayers often remind us, we have our own difficult challenges as a nation. I believe we have the capacity to build on the foundation that we have laid in the first 30 years of democracy. I definitely reject the notion that South Africa has not advanced in the first 3 decades of freedom and democracy. We have made great strides, we have made many mistakes, but progress there has been, and that cannot be quarreled with. Our challenge as South Africa is to ensure that the political cohesion created by the government of provincial unity results in accelerated and quality public service provision to all our people. Honorable Premier, you are fortunate to govern in a province with several distinguished higher education institutions. I wish today to urge you to use the innovation and research capacity of these institutions and to utilize them to build strong knowledge cooperation that advances your stated development agenda. The ambitions that you set out in the State of the Province address mirror to a great degree the goals and ambitions of our continent, Africa. I encourage Gauteng to work closely with regions in different parts of Africa and to create a momentum for shared growth and development on our continent. In our country, we often complain about our brothers and sisters from other parts of Africa, and they are using South Africa as a magnet for economic opportunity. To a great degree, this fault line results from our colonial history, in that apartheid colonialism ensured that South Africa became industrialized and its neighborhood was deindustrialized or not allowed to be productive at all. So to a great degree, in order to answer our concern about the levels of migrants into our country, we have to ensure the development of our neighborhood so that there is economic opportunity where people live. And this is a really difficult challenge to address, but it is one we must confront if we are to resolve the problematique of our continent. I've been really thrilled at the efforts of the Gauteng government to empower young people. I believe these efforts and initiatives have been insightful and they offer hope to our youth. I once had occasion to be at a venue where these young people who were trained in security oversight were present, giving us the necessary security and protection. I stopped and spoke to several of them because I love young people. And they were so excited, they were so blown away by the opportunity. I felt they were overprotecting us, but they were thrilled to have their hands with something to do. And so those who criticize such initiatives do not understand the thirst our young people have to be active and to be contributing. And whatever we can provide, we must ensure that opportunity is created. I am hoping that these initiatives will be broadened and extended to many more local communities and households. What would be some of the lessons? I think Minister Dlamini Zuma has spoken to quite a large number of them. But the first one I wish to speak to is I have learned while serving as a minister that you should not take anything for granted. All of us have a strong belief in gender equality, have a strong belief in non-racialism, because this is the ethos that is part of our political makeup. And yet you will find we initiate programs and we never ask the questions about the composition of the program. I recall investing in research chairs as Minister of Science and Technology again. And one day, by some dint, I asked our officials, how many women research chairs do we have? It was the first time I'd asked the question, and I was embarrassed at the response, because I assumed that attention to gender equality was part and parcel of the political praxis of South Africa. And I discovered to my horror that if you don't pay attention to it being implemented, it will be out of sight and out of mind to many of our public servants. So I learned to be attentive to the social goals of my country. And I think this is something I would ask all those who lead departments at the political level to pay attention to. I also think it's important that we do grapple with the ambition of our Constitution and our Freedom Charter that we would create an inclusive, non-racial South Africa. I think we should be wary of Africanizing everything and believing that people who are not like ourselves don't matter in our country. I think we shouldn't send that kind of message, because I believe what might happen over time will create a new class of disaffection when we could have had the opportunity of building something that is really worthy, that is cohesive, and that sets a new national tone for our country. So while indeed an important agenda is the empowerment of all of those who've previously been disadvantaged, let us have regard to how this is attended to. Because you will find that by our action to empower, we defeat the ideal of non-racialism, and so we don't live up to what we espouse as an organization and as a nation through the Bill of Rights of our Constitution. I also believe that one of the matters we must attend to is to ensure that we work really hard. I think there are a lot of lazy people who are in very powerful positions. Maybe, Premier, what you need to do is every morning at around 7:45, you phone everybody and find out where they are. And that you should have a special kind of cell phone with a particular GPS component that can tell you how you geolocate all those who should be in their departments at a particular time. Our legacy of disadvantage is huge as South Africa. And if we have people who are lazy, who cannot attend to the task, we are going to take centuries to change our condition. So I do say, let us ensure that we have people who work hard. And those who work hard must be rewarded, and the lazy people should be booted out, because we don't need them in our society. Of course, we have a very complex society with many multifaceted socioeconomic issues to address. But with attention to detail, I believe we can change our condition. It was President Mbeki who, in commenting on the NEPAD plan, indicated that if it has taken a century to arrive at a particular point, if you have advanced technology, you can leapfrog. You don't have to repeat all the steps. So it cannot take us 100 years to achieve quality education. It cannot take us 100 years to achieve a minimum of 6% growth. It is care, it is attention to detail, it's being resolute about implementing the programs we set out so beautifully in our various addresses as leaders in our country. And of course, what we must do as we set out these programs, we also have to have the courage to ask ourselves, what am I not doing right? Why am I investing funds in human settlements and yet no houses are being built? What is the actual cause of this? And when we identify the cause, we address it. We don't do an assessment merely to have an answer. We do an assessment to solve the problem. And some of my concern about our country is we are too good at gazing at the problem, and we are rather inadequate at finding the solutions. Many people ask very odd questions sometimes. So some people ask me, why don't you be our president? I tell them I have no such ambition. And they say, why? I say, I'm a hands-on person. I like to get my hands dirty. I like to feel. I like to have product that comes out of my work. This is how I've always lived with the various ministries I've had the privilege to serve in. So I really, Premier, want to ask you, make sure your MECs are hands-on, that they know what's happening out there, and that they are helping our people to address that thing I mentioned earlier, that we do inherit the conscientization that has shaped our consciousness in a negative fashion. We walk along, the streets are dirty. We have a new building, and in a short time it looks as though it is 100 years old. It is crumbling. We do not renovate. We don't maintain. Why should that be seen as cultural when it is so destructive to our national assets? So I'm hopeful that Gauteng, which has a lot of young people, a lot of you look like you're sort of 40-ish or under, there's a lot of young people who have time to do a great deal of things. And if you can change our nation's thinking of itself, if you can get your residents of Gauteng to know that if they see a paper on the street, they're going to bend down and pick it up, that your local government workers know that if they're supposed to clean the streets, they will clean them, that the pavements will be tidy, that potholes will be got rid of. There is nothing magical about doing all of these things. All you need is the will to make the difference. You could not have achieved what Minister Dlamini spoke of, Minister Dlamini Zuma spoke of, if you didn't have that commitment, if you didn't have a different consciousness, if you didn't have a work ethic dedicated to practical realization of goals. So I'm going to be looking very carefully at all your speeches, the MECs, and I'm going to give you 24 months, and then I'm going to go back to your speeches, and I'm going to assess how far you've come, and I will write an article on you.
Yes.
And Premier, I've been particularly struck by your commitment to strengthen township economies and to increase entrepreneurship. This, I believe, is an important route to prosperity for South Africa and must be supported and implemented. I cannot recall how many times I have raised in our circles my concern about our allowing the perpetual trading on the pavement for African women and men. Many countries have used that sign of entrepreneurship to create specialized markets of fruit, vegetables, of fish, of fruit and vegetables, or fish, or leatherwork, or other commodity, and have created decent spaces for people to trade. Spaces that attract tourists, that attract people who wish to buy, that attract economic livelihood. Why is it acceptable that for African people it must be a rickety table at a corner, a rickety table on a pavement, dirty pans, smoke, filth in front of our traders? Why can't we create a better condition? And why can't we say to them, because we can't do everything for everyone, we pretend that we can, but we can't. Why don't we say to our people, we provide these facilities, but it's your responsibility to keep them clean. And if you don't, you will lose the space. We must engender a new notion of ourselves among and within the people of South Africa. We have, in my view, a great